For an update on the situation in Libya, I spoke earlier this evening to Simon Denyer of The Washington Post, who's in Tripoli. Simon Denyer, thank you for joining us. Tell us first what it's like in Tripoli today. What are you seeing? What are you hearing on the streets?
Well, life is returning to normal in Tripoli. Every day it gets a little bit better. There are fewer checkpoints on the streets today than there were. There are more shops open. We're just coming to the end of Ramadan, so people were keen today to get out, to buy presents for their children, buy clothes for their children. So you actually saw queues outside some of the clothes shops here. Traffic is returning to the streets. I mean, it's still not back to normal, but you're seeing the heart beginning to beat again for Tripoli.
And do people have the basics? I mean, food, water, electricity?
There's not a lot of water, to be honest with you. There's not a lot of water anywhere. There's some drinking water, but very little water coming out of the taps anywhere in Tripoli. There have been some deliveries. Communities are getting their own water and distributing it themselves. Electricity has been intermittent. Haven't noticed any power cuts today, but it has been a problem. Otherwise, generally there are some shortages. There have been shortages of baby milk. There are some shortages of drugs in the hospitals. So the city's still struggling, but people are coping. Generally, neighbourhoods are working together. Neighbours are helping each other out. There's a good spirit in the streets.
And how are the rebels behaving now that they're in control? Amnesty International has accused them of torture and abuse of Gaddafi loyalists.
Yeah, I mean, there are some question marks there about how they're treating some of the Gaddafi troops that they're capturing, particularly people they consider to be mercenaries. Basically, anyone with a black skin they suspect of being a foreigner from an African country. They may be from the south of Libya, but they tend to suspect them of not being so, and there are reports that they're mistreating them. I have to say, there's nothing on the scale or remotely on the scale of what the Gaddafi forces seem to have done as they withdrew. Widespread massacres of prisoners by Gaddafi forces, several instances of that. So, yes, there are some question marks about the rebels, but it's not on that scale.
Now, how much do you know and can tell us about how the rebels' advance on Sirte is progressing?
Well, they're closing in. They're steadily closing in. There's no doubt about that. But they haven't made the final thrust. There are still their best fighters, actually, are the fighters hardened for the battle from Misrata. And many of those fighters are still here in Tripoli. They've been securing Tripoli, and I think they're having a little bit of a break. When they go towards Sirte, I think you're going to see them join in that final assault on Sirte. There is talk about negotiations going on. We haven't seen any for a peaceful surrender of Sirte. We haven't seen any progress in those negotiations, or haven't heard about any progress in those negotiations. And if they fail, I think, yes, you will see in the next few days a sort of concerted a stepping up of the pressure on Sirte and possibly a final assault.
And is the prospect of a negotiated settlement with Gaddafi, under which, for instance, he could leave the country, is that still in the cards at all?
No, that's completely off the table. The new government here has made that very clear. They're hunting Gaddafi as a criminal. They want to bring him to justice. They want to bring him to justice in Libya, as it happens. But yes, negotiations, if they ever were interested in negotiations, they're certainly not interested in them now. They think they've more or less won, and they want to see Gaddafi captured or killed. That is what most Libyans say, that they won't feel completely secure until Gaddafi is captured. They don't necessarily want him to be lynched. They want him to be put on trial. They want him to pay for what they consider to be his crimes.
And finally, briefly, does anyone have any idea of where he is right now?
Well, the honest answer is not really. I mean, we do have these reports confirmed by the Algerian government that members of his family have fled to Algeria. It's entirely possible that he may have joined them, but the Algerians aren't admitting that, and he doesn't want to admit that yet. There are reports he could be in Beni Walid, which is a town south of Misrata, which is a town where he does have tribally a lot of support. So that's a possibility. There are other towns in the south that we hear about from time to time as potential bolt holes for Gaddafi. I suspect he's not in Sirte because Sirte has been more or less surrounded. So I suspect if he's one step ahead, he's probably somewhere else. But that's pretty much all we know.
All right. Well, Simon Denyer of the Washington Post, thanks so much.
Thank you.